Good morning, and glad to have you on the program Perspectives. Perspectives this morning will be staying within the state, and that's talking about Kaduna State. And of course, some of you already know that rains are pouring, and when it rains, it pours. There are some, issues coming out with the rains, and that's about flooding, as we've seen in some parts of the state. Now, precautions, are given to people, especially those in water-prone areas, that this season is not a season where we should be off our guard. And so we have in our studios this morning Malam Abubakar Hassan. He is the Executive Secretary of the State Emergency Management Agency, SEMA. He'll be sharing thoughts with us about the rains and the consequences. Malam Abubakar, good morning. Glad to have you in our studios again.
Good morning. And before I say good morning to our listeners out there, please let me beg the listeners out there to allow me to say good morning to His Excellency, the Governor of the state, the one who has woken up today with the weight of 9 million people over his head. Believe me to him, it is not an easy task. So allow me to say good morning to His Excellency, Malam Nasser Ahmed Rufai, for waking up this morning and getting ready to lead the state to prevent flooding amongst the people. But again, to our listeners out there, good morning to all of us, and may we have a lovely week.
Thank you very much. Good morning from all of us here in Invicta to His Excellency too. And we hope that you do have a wonderful day. Flooding, it's not the first of its kind in Kaduna. It's all over the world that flooding is taking its toll in some countries of the world. And we see the horrendous damage again being done by flooding. We all want the rains, but the global warming, they say, has changed the face of the world too, especially with what comes out, the heat, the flood, and all of that. For Kaduna State, flooding this season, what are the concerns here?
Well, one major concern is about our ability as a people to learn from incidences of the past and be able to utilize that information, that knowledge, in a way that it will help us shape the future of our engagement around risk that lives around. You cannot eliminate risk. You cannot eliminate all of these hazards that live around, especially rain. It will always come. So our ability as a people, our abilities as individuals, as communities, as a state, now heavily relies on how have we been able, year in, year out, to be able to manage and put structures on ground that will help us to be able to address the consequences of heavy rain when it sets on us. I think that's our major concern, and that's what has shapely informed the new drive from the state emergency management perspective on how to deal with flooding going forward in the state.
Again, one issue here that comes out here would be about drainage. Now, let me just take you up, and take you up with the urban renewal program that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of, our routes being done in the shape that it will take many years to come before we have issues of flooding in the cities. But drainage, and in some parts of Kaduna, that has been an issue.
Well, it's an issue because, you see, the government, looking at the urban renewal project, is about sending a message out there to the people saying we care about you and we understand the importance of drainages within communities to prevent issues of flooding, and that's why, or that's what informs the nature of these particular drainages that you are seeing today. But beyond these major drainages that are happening out there, there's this constant need for people to understand what responsibility do they have in the area of governance. If I build a house, what should inform why I need to put up a drainage in front of that house? Is it my responsibility, or is it the government responsibility to put up a drainage in front of my house? And where there is even a drainage, should anything happen to that drainage? Should that feel of that drainage? Do I feel it as a sense of responsibility, as a civic duty on my own part to clean up the debris inside that drainage in such a way that water comes in and passes away? But remember, we're not just talking about water. We're also talking about other associated risks that comes with what? Living in a filthy environment, or having drainages that are filled up and have become reasons for our health to be at risk. So this is the major concern. We have the government is working to put up these drainages, but in other areas where the government is not there yet, for example, we have people within local government areas or communities that have chosen deliberately to just overlook this situation. The drainages are there, coming out to clean them is a major task, and that's one of the major concerns that we have with drainages and then blocked waterways within communities that have today been one major reason why we have what we call urban flooding, most especially in and around the metropolis of Kaduna.
In Kaduna, have you identified flood-prone areas that you can say and tell people via this media that you should be cautious? I do know if you come to town, in some parts of Constitution Road, there's always been Ngwarimi areas, by the riverside. We've always had this thing that we should be careful with the rains. But has anything happened of significance in this area?
Well, Toyin, it will interest you to know that areas that you have just mentioned, I'm sure you didn't hear about any flooding this year. Yes, because we have also stepped up our game. The responsibility part of governance has really kicked in, looking at the learnings from the incidences of the past. And that's why this year you're not hearing any issues around it, because the agency responsible now, there is more coordination in terms of how the agencies of government that are responsible for mitigating risks. For example, I take SEMA, for example, as the coordinating body. I take Kasubda, for example. I take Kaji, for example. Okay, and KEPA, the Minister of Environment, under which the flooding mitigation committee sits to say this synergy that we've been looking to get, this coordination that we've been looking to bring in to bear on what we need to do now has come into play, and that's why today you're seeing that we don't have issues around all of these areas. But that's not to say that there are no other areas that have been impacted by these levels of flooding within the metropolis of Kaduna. This issue is even beyond just the fact that we have gone out to look at those areas and desilt those blocked waterways. But it also goes to say that there is a lot that has to do with the behavior of people towards understanding the concept of the law and abiding by the law in order to ensure that reduction of risk around lives and properties of people is being addressed properly.
You just talked about behaviors of people, and here I would like to just ask that enforcement again can change behaviors of people. What enforcements have been put on ground to see that people change their attitude and behaviors to the environment?
Well, majorly, you see, we do a lot of engagement at community level, and I will tell you that between January 2021 to date, I can't tell you the number of community engagements that have taken place with respect to getting people, most of those who live close to the riverine areas, with respect to what the government intends to do in order to get them to be relocated out of those flood-prone areas. That engagement has taken place so well that it's part of what you have talked about in terms of enforcement. But you see, in terms of enforcement, there is a human angle to enforcement, and it's something that is gradual, but surely we're taking it, but we will get there. And that's why you will see at different times the government of the day engages people, engages them, and have different levels of communication so that people understand that this is what the government is trying to do.
When you talk about relocation, do you have the willingness of the people? Are they ready, especially when we talk about lands that have been inherited by forefathers, by generations, and then to want to relocate them overnight?
Well, it's not overnight. It's not an overnight issue. I think one major problem that we have in this country is that legacy mentality. You see, change must happen, and that's why from a toddler you grow to being a teenager, being an adult, and then you're aging and then going back to your Lord. So there are different phases of life, and if those phases define the concept of change, you should know that legacy mentality does not really happen, most especially when that mentality is about risk that will affect life and property. And it is the responsibility of the state to ensure that we protect the life and property of the people. And that's what informs the different levels of engagement that has already been put in place towards addressing people who are living within floodplains, so that the government can get them moved out of those locations, so that lives and property of the people will be safe. We don't want anybody to be in danger. We don't want any properties to be at risk of people losing them, and then it becomes another major issue for governance.
We all will rely on the meteorologists to tell us about the rains and how they would come. But again, with the global warming, again, sometimes predictions, might not just be, as we would expect them. Yes. When September now, by the end of August, some predictions, were saying that we probably are getting close to the end of the season, or the seasonal time for the rains. But we're into September and going further, and the rains are still pouring, and you begin to wonder again how long this will take, even with what the meteorologists' predictions on it. Talking to the people again about what would happen.
Well, I will tell you that there's a need for people of Nigeria, or residents of the state, to begin to look at what government says with all manner of seriousness. I will tell you that the predictions were done as early as April in the year 2021. And at the point when that was done, different stakeholders, from the local government, we had representatives, from the community, we had representatives, from youth groups, we had representatives, from religious organizations. We had representatives who were put in together as major stakeholders that actually speak to a large chunk of the population. We were put in there, the predictions were made, the implications of the predictions were made, and it was to enable these groups of people go back to communities to step down this information, so that people can begin to understand, people can begin to prepare, people can begin to plan towards this rain. It was predicted in 2021 that we're going to see rain for over 360 days, starting from the month of June. So what are we talking about? The predictions have been made, and that is what informed the level of engagement that we, even at the State Emergency Management, have conducted across different communities. It will interest you to know that within this period, the State Emergency Management Agency was also reviewing the Kaduna State Contingency Emergency Plan. And as a result of that process, the State Emergency Management Agency was in the 225 wards of the state. And we have 6 responders across the local government wards that were trained to what? Understand early warning signals, trained to be able to report when they understand these signals in such a way that we can address these issues when they come. Remember, we have the local emergency management committees at the local government level under the offices of what? The vice chairman. And these committees comprise not just local government officials, but also community leaders, religious leaders, youth groups, and even opinion shapers within communities, and the members of what? The civil society and the police, the civil defense, all within these communities. What is that meant to address? All these issues that we're talking about. So the question is, should we leverage on the opportunity that has been brought to our doorsteps? I think that is what we need to do as the first step. But beyond all of that, we as a people need to understand what is our own responsibility. If I wake up in the morning, I listen to a program where a military man was saying that when he wakes up in the morning, the first thing he does is that he makes bed. At least one task accomplished. Before you step out of your home, how many tasks would you have accomplished today on behalf of the state to say, I have done my part? If it is just to simply clean the gutters in front of your house, that is one task accomplished. Do we take that as our own responsibility? Do we take that as our part of giving back to the society, to our community, giving back to the state to support the effort that the government is making. These are the issues that we need to be talking about. These are the issues that we need to be looking at as a people.
Yeah, Booker, let me take you back. And taking you back would mean going to the suburbs, or going into areas where you have majority of the people, crowded areas, so to say, and town planning, or had not been taken care of, and people just jam themselves, living in that area. For these are areas that the flood could do damage to. How are you reaching out?
No, I agree quite all right. You see, town planning is a function of so many variables, and you see, it's a gradual process for planning around where people actually reside. And there are so many reasons why a lot of people converge and continue to converge. That does not absolutely take away the fact that law exists around town planning. But as humans, year in, year out, day in, day out, you begin to see people violate the existence of the law. Well, we are, I'm sure, the agency responsible for ensuring that we have people abide by the law with respect to town planning. I mean, extremely well, but I can assure you that we are not there yet, but we have already taken the direction in terms of ensuring that going forward in Kaduna State, planning purposes for people to live in a well-lighted environment, well-aired environment will surely be the thing going forward. And you can see all of that, most especially with the urban planning, urbanization that is happening or going on in Kaduna today. You can see the level of activity around the Kaduna State Geographical Information System. You can see activities around Kaduna State Urban and Environmental Kasunda. These levels of activity goes to say that the government of the day is not resting at all. The people matter to the government, and so if the people matter, we cannot rest until we get people to understand that whatever we're doing as a state, as a policy of the state, is about the people. And if it is going to take us the next 100 years to do it, it is something we understand. It is a gradual process, we know, but we will surely get there. But the most important success is that it has started.
For this rainy season, are there areas that you have identified and said that, yes, you've had to move out of this area or something needs to be done? Areas that have come to the attention of SEMA, that these are areas that are prone to flooding.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, we don't just look at flooding from the point of view of the urban areas, but within Kaduna Metropolis, certainly areas around Kinkino, areas around Rigasa, areas around Malalingabas. So there's so many. So looking at Chukun local government, I would say Kaduna South, Kaduna North, and Igabi local government that make up what we call the Kaduna State Metropolis. There are so many areas that today have been prone or are still prone to issues around flooding, and the major reasons are simply due to blocked waterways, which sensitization, engagements of those people are still ongoing to see that people actually open up those channels, and where we have deliberate violations of the law, where people have erected structures along those paths, the agency responsible have been called in, and already measures are being taken to address all of those challenges with respect to violations of the law. But with respect to communities where engagements and getting people to commit to environmental sanitation, which is a major issue, have been ongoing, so that people can begin to understand the need to go back to those old ways that we believe are old. But certainly for me, there's nothing old in terms of being clean. Every day should be a new day. You should look at it as a new day and begin to improve upon what you have been doing in the past, so that life ahead can be better.
SEMA, State Emergency Management Agency. In this period, what emergency steps have you taken, especially for those areas that we've identified as flood-prone areas? Is it in terms of giving materials, and giving, talks, and all of that.
So you see, for us at the State Emergency Management Agency, you will agree with me that if I go to His Excellency and say, give me $1 billion today, because I want to buy materials, food items as relief, building materials for people to erect their buildings, it will never be enough. What is critical is for us to begin to address the major consequences that leads to this action. And that is the brain of the process. What informs behavior? What will get people to change and look at things differently? And that is our major focus. We know that it is important that we begin to get people to understand, either by way of communication or by way of shared information. Because most people sometimes only understand when they see. So it's not about giving them support, but it's about teaching them what they need to understand to do to reduce their level of exposure to the risk. How much will you give one whose herd of cattle has been washed away by water due to his own what? Carelessness or negligence? How much will you pay to a business where the whole factory has been washed away by water? How much will you? Rather than invest in getting this to the people, the relief that people always want to look out to the state to do, why don't we invest more in community dialogue, in community engagement, in continuous, robust sensitization of the people towards getting them to understand the basics? And that's why our own approach is to keep it simple, straight and simple. Before we go to the complications, go to the technicalities of what we need to do at a higher level, at strategic level, to reduce the levels of rain. Why don't we look at the basics? Today, we have drainages, and we understand that if we have blocked drainages, water will not be able to move freely. What do we need to do? Clean up those drainages. So why do we need to begin to invest in getting food to give to people as relief, or building materials, when simply what we need to do is to get to invest in getting people, sensitizing them to begin to do sanitation? And to us, that's what's most critical. That's what's most important. Getting the people to understand their responsibility to themselves first. But when it happens and it is beyond their capacity or capability to address the issues, the government is always there to support the people, because the government knows that you have done your own part.
Oh, we never know when an emergency could show face. But again, I want to take you on this area of funding, which could be another challenge that the agency may be facing. In terms of partnership too, from what you get from government, how have you reached out in terms of partnerships to, other groups who might want to help out in emergency situations?
Excellent. Thank you to him for bringing this up. Believe me, as a state agency, we already have that understanding that the business of emergency management has and will never be the entire responsibility of SEMA. We cannot do it alone. But let me start by appreciating the government under the leadership of His Excellency. I will tell you that the support that we require, the environment that we need to operate, has been given to us. And part of that responsibility, part of that enabling environment that has been given to us, is our ability to really open up what we've done in terms of partnership. Is it partnership with the civil society? I will tell you that is at its highest peak today. Is it partnership with other organizations, for example, the United Nations under UNICEF, which is a major supporter of what we do in SEMA? Is it the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, that has supported us fully this year in ensuring that we get our mitigation plan, Kaduna State Contingency Plan up and running, reviewed fully, and also with even internal capacity looking at changing from a manual to a digital state emergency management agency. I will tell you that is already ongoing. So support and partnership, I will tell you from the government side, we are at 100%. Even externally, we are still building that. We're hoping that all the partners that are looking into addressing the basic requirements that will help us to mitigate risk or exposure of our people, we are opening up. We've not gotten there yet, but I can assure you that we are going there. One of that is Invicta today. We have been supported by Invicta to discuss all of this, because this is one other channel at getting people to listen to what it is that we do, understand our own point of view, our own perspective to these issues, and also through this medium of the press. You understand, different organizations under the press in Kaduna have supported what we do. So we have good working relationship with the media in Kaduna, because we understand that has the widest reach, that will take our messages out there to the people. So we are never going to relent. We want to get to a point where every single household is an ambassador of the state emergency management, because safety as well as security is everybody's business.
The program is Perspectives, and it's coming to you on Victor 98.9. And this morning, sharing thoughts with us on matters of flooding in the state, Malam Abubakar Hassan, the Executive Secretary of the State Emergency Management Agency, SEMA, with us. We'll go for a commercial break. Be back with you shortly.
Holding it down 100 on Invicta 98.9 FM.
Welcome back. Is the program Perspectives this morning, and looking at flooding in the state. How Kaduna has been a lucky state, I would say. But let's go to the world. See the world, what's happening around the world. And we would say in this part of the world that God has been merciful. He's been kind to us. We're talking about natural disasters. America today is still the heat wave and what it is doing, the flooding, coming up in some parts of America. And Australia, just go around and see what is happening in Europe with wildfires and flooding. But in this part, we've been this lucky. Let me stay again. We couldn't stay. With me again, once again, Malam Abubakar Hassan, the Executive Secretary of SEMA, sharing thoughts with us about how this has been managed, or it's been managed in Kaduna State. I'd like to talk about the rains too. Again, Jigawa, we all know the sad event of some people that were swept away by the rains with the collapse of a bridge. But in Kaduna, what we've seen is that the flooding has also impacted on lands, farming lands. And of course, we'll be talking about areas of food security and all of that. Areas that were affected here and what to be done here.
Well, we have farmlands that have been impacted in Igabi local government, Ikara local government, Makarki local government, in Kauru local government, in Soba local government. We have farmlands that have actually been reported even in Kachia, and first is to go in and conduct an assessment. And our first responders in this regard are, first of all, the 6 community people that we have per ward that are always there to ensure that as it is being reported, they are capturing this information live as it is happening, so that helps us to be able to understand the root causes of this flooding when they happen. But I can assure you that at the moment, we've gotten reports from all these local emergency management committees across these local governments that have been impacted already. And this morning, we are stepping out again with the national support of the National Emergency Management Agency in Kaduna. We are lucky again. We have the regional office here also situated in Kaduna. So we are going out there again to conduct further assessment of the extent of damage, but also beyond the extent of damage, to look at also the root causes, because that will help us to understand the causative issues that resulted in the flooding. In some instances, I can assure you that most times it's not just about flooding, but about so many other items. For example, tree felling. People cut down trees, but most people don't really associate flooding with the cutting down of trees in communities. So we also look at all of those human-induced elements around what could have caused all of this, so that the result of all of this get to be analyzed, get to be reviewed by experts, and then we begin to plan to see what we can do to address these issues in the coming year. But certainly we'll be looking at 3-4 years back and begin to place these communities where these issues have happened, to see if they have been featured in the last 3, 4, 5 years, so that we know that it is a current situation. I mean, it's a current situation in those communities, and where some of them are new, we begin to see what exactly were those factors that actually led to that. So we are currently assessing the extent of the damage caused by the rain so far in those communities, and then we're also looking out for other communities through our first responders and also the local emergency management committees that are in all the other local governments, so that we're going to see what we can do. Now that the rains are coming towards an end, they are also intensifying in terms of strength and velocity, and so it's important that we put our heads together to see what can be done to get people informed now regularly. And that's why you will also agree with me, you've been seeing the weather forecast coming out almost on a daily basis now, giving people an indication that the rains are coming to an end, but they are going to be really strong. There will be strong winds, strong storms, and people need to be cautious, be aware of what they need to do, so that we do not record any serious loss of lives or property.
Right, be part of this conversation. Talk to us. What is the situation in your area? And of course, what are those questions you want to ask about the rain? And of course, what it comes with. Numbers to call to be part of this program: 081 40,000 989, 081 40,000 989, or 070 87 800 989, 070 87 800 989. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Well, with your calls now, and numbers 081 40,000 989. The rains are coming to an end, but again, with strong winds, the veracity of it, and what you need to know, and what caution that you must take, as the rains are beginning to pack up, so to say. And so, we would want you to, help.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. This is William.
All right, William.
Yes. I greet your guest.
Thank you.
And I greet you. Yes. Actually, I just want to bring in some advice. You see this dumping of refuse all over, especially if you go across Narai, and if you are going to Narai, within that bridge. I think government should do something about that. The way they dump refuse in that environment is not good. If government can bring some kind of drums, they should supply drums so that people put drums go to their environment. At least let private organizations come in to support, so that even if it is to be paying 20 naira at the end of the day, they will be packing some of those dustbins and be taking it to a far distance. It will go a long way in helping.
Thank you.
Yes, that's my
All right,
my
Williams, thank you. Yes. Again,
William is saying we should bring in, government should consider private participation in the area of waste management in Kaduna, and I can assure you that your message is taken, Mr. William, and we will ensure that we do everything we can to get in people to support the effort of government. But like I will always say, we are the owners of the waste. We produce the waste. We should begin, first of all, to manage how we pack our waste, even within our homes, before we take them out.
Okay.
To dump them.
Yes, still with your calls. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Please, I'm speaking from Marabori.
Your name, please.
My name is Joseph.
Joseph.
I have two things. Number one is this issue of people falling sick. Like as I told you, I say in Marabarido, every evening and sometimes early in the morning, you see people coming out lorry with a lot of things, so-called firewood. So I wonder what the government is doing about that. Then number two, I will want to ask, please, because I have lost track of things. When do we expect this rain to end? Is it maybe early October or probably ending of September or thereabouts?
Okay, Joseph. Over to you. Okay, I have another call there. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
It's Buba Umar.
All right, Buba over.
I just want to ask. Now, whenever we talk of flood, unlike in other, like Egypt and other related countries, where flood is translated into irrigation. Now, your organizations most at times are more of early warning and so on. Now, what are you doing towards converting what we see it as disaster to economic activities? These are the things what we want you to please. In fact, check a paradigm change. Not any warning or whatsoever it means or warning. Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, Buba Umar. All right, got you on that. Can we squeeze in a call before we come back to our guest? Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
You are speaking with Jamil. I'm calling you from West Ministry.
Okay, Jamil.
Good morning to your guests as well. I was following everything that he was saying, but there is something that you asked him, Mr. Tony, that you asked him, what is the capacity providing for the, should I say, the victims that are being evacuated from the flood area? Is it that government have provided a place for them? You have not answered that question, but what he was saying was the only thing that they did was for them to did what they call publication. If you are doing publication, you are evicting people from their ancestral home. Are you not going to provide a place for them? That question has not been answered.
Okay.
Then number two, at the same time, there are people that are there, they farm, that is the place they farm, that is their livelihood. So when you are taking the ask from that place, what did you provide for them that they will use to support yourself? Because I felt this is one of those things that is causing insecurity in the land. When all these things are not checked, definitely there will be problem in the land. So I will want your guests to answer all these ones for us to have a better understanding of what he's saying. Thank you.
All right, Jamil. All right, thank you.
Let me start with Jamil, which is the last one. Jamil, the government of the day, and I want to say like every government, but I will speak for the government of the day. The government of the day does not evict people unjustly. I know there are times people stay in locations without recourse to the law, and they call it heritage. The law that guides land use in Nigeria is already there, is sacrosanct there. So, and that's the reason why we have the engagement that the Kaduna State government has been doing with respect to looking at areas where they have earmarked as where people need to actually leave those areas. There was never a time the government wakes up in the morning and just goes into a location and just evicts people out of those locations. And if there is, let the person bring it out. The government has always, as a matter of responsibility, engaged the people through different mediums before the evictions happen. And I will assure you that in all of those engagements, I can assure you that measures have been taken to address this issue that he raised in terms of where do they need to go beyond where they are currently. There are those, you will agree with me, that are genuine, and I'm sure the government is looking at that. But where you go against the law and erect a structure against the law, violate the process, violate the existing law of the land, and then you call on government to compensate you for violating the laws of the land, I'm not sure that is a justified call to make. But I can assure you, the government is engaging people with respect to issues around land allocation and land use in Kaduna State. With respect to the Buba Umar, who talks about beyond early warning, I completely agree with Buba, and I can assure Buba that it is not just about the early warning. It is about what we are doing now to begin to harvest for irrigation. And it is simple. We don't, without making it complicated. If you go into homes today, you will see that a lot of people have reservoirs even within the home. What are those reservoirs meant for? You have reservoirs because you have that assumption that you may not have water 24 hours a day. And if you don't have it, you can always, within times where you don't have it, fall back to your reservoirs and make sure that what you now continue to live your life. And so that applies to even these areas where we have these buildings. Like he is saying, what do we do to begin to cultivate like it's done in other areas? That is an issue being looked at, and engagements have already gone in. The experts are already looking at what we need to do to be able to cultivate this water when they come. Because when they come and wash our properties and go, we will still come back looking for the waters again during times where the rains have gone. So we're looking into that opportunity, that economic activity of harvesting this water when it comes, so that we can bring them back for irrigation purposes. And
it's Joseph too. Joseph was talking about felling of trees.
Well, I can assure Joseph that the issue of felling of trees is a major concern today, and the Minister of Environment is already working assiduously to check these manners of trees felling in Kaduna State. First of all, let me assure him that with the enforcement that is already been in place, the government has also set aside a mechanism through the Ministry of Agri to plant in these trees, these economic trees that are of high quality, so that people can use them and without necessarily going in to felling of trees that will expose our communities to disaster. What we need is for people to go in, tap into the opportunity, discuss with the Minister of Agriculture and see how this can be done, so that we can minimize the exposure that we're putting our communities to by felling of trees. But certainly, felling of trees is against the law.
Again, let me just quickly go back to Williams. He had talked about, he mentioned an area, areas like Narai, where you have, people living, yet this huge dump, and within the city, the health challenges there, and all of that. But why is it that government would not provide, areas for, people to dump their refuse?
Well, I can understand that with him when he talks about the fact that we need to expand and make available at different locations all of these cans, and that's increasing the number of dump sites, so that people can easily just come out of their homes and dump these items. I can agree with you. I agree with you well, and I can assure you that the game has been stepped up. If you go out to those locations today, even this morning while on my way here, I also met these environmental people taking out all of these refugees. So it's not just about the different sites. It's about the intensity in terms of ensuring that we evacuate this waste, and that is what is critical, and that is what the government is doing now. So it's not just about give us dump sites everywhere. No, that's not the solution. But at what level can we step up the game to evacuate and ensure that the bins are always empty without necessarily being fully down? But again, we need to call on the communities to also ensure that they support the government effort. With this indiscriminate dump, people just come out sometimes, they become so lazy. Because it is 10 houses away from me, I just want to dump it anywhere behind a home and turn that behind to be a dump site. And that's what you begin to see in most of the communities. Simply because everyone thinks that the government should provide a dump site in front of his house. It doesn't happen that way. People need to understand also the implications of all of that. And that's why strategically the dump sites are being located in different communities. So the communities need to also put eyes on all of this so that they can support the effort of government.
Okay. All right. we're gradually coming to the end of the program, but just before we go on the program, if there are words you want to give out or reach out to the listener out there, yes, the rains are gradually rounding up, but again, some caution should take by the people out there. What are some of those things you want to say, share with them?
Well, the rain has been predicted will last up to October. We're going to see rains up to October this year, and I'm sure someone asked that question. But in all of this, we have talked about some human-induced elements, some human-induced actions that have actually caused a lot of flooding in our urban settings. For example, a lot of people talked about the fact that people indiscriminately dump refugees, which is a call that we need to do to communities to really watch out. We want people to begin to look out for their communities, and beyond looking out, we want people to also step up their responsibility game. People need to go back to their early days or ways back. If you are thinking heritage in terms of land ownership, you should also be thinking heritage in terms of what our forefathers have done to keep our environments clean. Also adopt that methodology here today. Ensure that you do what? Daily, weekly, or monthly environmental sanitation within communities, and ensure that all the designated areas where these dumps are put or sited, we ensure that we get people to ensure that those dumps are not allowed to be littered. And then from our own side of government, we can assure the people that evacuation is going to be more robust than it has always been, so that it will also complement the effort of the communities at ensuring that they look out for people who do this indiscriminate dumping of refugees. But beyond all of this, it is important, critically important, that we support the government effort at ensuring that we reach out to everyone. Protection of life and property, yes, is the responsibility of government. But we as a people have a role critical to play, because safety and security is everybody's concern.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toyin. Good morning, and let me wish all of us, residents of Kaduna, and my governor, a happy, fruitful week.
That will just be about the size of it on the program Perspectives this morning. We'll be talking with Malam Abubakar Hassan, the Executive Secretary of the State Emergency Management Agency, SEMA. We'll be talking about rains and how to keep our environment too clean. More than any other thing, we're also asking you out there to stay safe. And thank you, my colleague Morpheus, for connecting me with the people this morning, and Wisdom for putting us in the pictures. Thank you too. Blessings for being part of it this morning. We'll come back with Perspective.
We're going to have a blessed week.
Good morning.